Japan by River Cruise is made possible thanks to the generosity of our sponsors.
Sushi, tempura, teriyaki. Food has long been a major draw when it comes to Japan-bound tourism. But when you're here, don't miss out on one of the country's proudest culinary delights. Japanese McDonald's. Where else in the world can you enjoy a cola that isn't sized to give you diabetes? French fries cooked in oil that was actually changed out on time, and chicken nuggets that haven't been in contact with anyone's genitalia. So make the most of your visit to Japan by stopping in at Japanese McDonald's, the only McDonald's on the planet where a Big Mac looks like the picture of a Big Mac. Welcome back to Japan by River Cruise. I'm Bobby Judo.
And I'm Ollie Horn.
Right, on today's show, we are absolutely tired of talking about coronavirus, so we're going to take a look at a few more lighthearted stories, like this one in which a man gets arrested for causing serious bodily harm to another man by blasting him in the ass with compressed air. And that's basically the whole story. Honestly, we'll probably talk more about coronavirus. Also, Ollie's got your river cruise recommendation. Yeah, Ollie?
Yes, this week's recommendation is a special cruise that lasts exactly 1 hour. This cruise has been developed by JapanRecipes.com, especially for fans of online recipes. The first 50 minutes of the cruise are on land. It explains the history of the cruise, what the cruise meant to the captain's grandmother, the emotions that the crew feel when they go on the cruise. And the next 5 minutes are a slideshow showing artistic images of the boat from impossible angles. And the final 5 minutes are actually spent going on a cruise.
Plus, many river cruises draw customers by offering inclusive fishing packages, but a handful of operators are trying their hand at a new catfishing package. That's right, for one fixed price, they'll trick someone into going on a date with you in a setting where they're basically trapped with you even after they've seen your terrible face. But first, soap talk.
Bobby Judah, how's your week been?
Good. I'm doing a bunch of different stuff. I don't know if you noticed, I've started kind of intermittently posting on YouTube again.
I noticed. And I'm in a group of about 3,000 people that noticed.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've noticed that my view counts are much smaller than they used to be. And also every time I post, I lose like 600 subscribers. Actually,
that's exactly what happens to my Instagram. I do not post anything on my Instagram for a week. I get like 10 followers. I post an image, 20 of them go. It's better that I don't post.
Yes, you lose the 10 you got who just figured out why you're posting, and you lose another 10 who are reminded of you.
But what I would say is that the vitriol under your videos is slightly more considered now. Like the people that have hung around are the ones that really have an axe to grind.
Well, I mean, I think there are people who like just hate me so much that they follow, and every time they see that I posted something new, they just automatically thumbs down or automatically leave a negative comment. But
that's how we became friends, I think.
The last video I put up was in response to a comment I got a couple weeks back that was all about how foreigners can't speak native level Japanese, and because they don't try to fix their pronunciation errors and then insist that they are able to speak Japanese anyway, it creates this distance that makes it impossible for them to understand Japanese culture, for Japanese people to get along with them, and for communication to be really effective, which is just like racist bullshit. It's just like...
it is. I mean, I think there is one way of excusing this viewpoint. Like, I think this viewpoint is inexcusable, that foreign people have an accent, therefore they don't know how to do Japanese flower arranging the proper way, or Japanese people don't know how to use morae properly, therefore I'm going to have to watch extra carefully to make sure they put the right plastic bottle out this week in the recycling. But one thing that I will say in defense of Japanese people who think this way is, as an English speaker, we are exposed to such a diversity of different accents,
right?
That it just doesn't shock you if someone starts speaking English and they speak with an accent that you can't place, right? So very very commonly, right, you'll speak to someone, and you go, oh, they seem a bit Scandinavian, and kind of, but that's where the thought stops, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't continue to pray, just and something that I think uh, people who speak English as a second language don't realize is that even as a British person, or an English person, I should say, I don't feel ownership of the English language. That's to say, I genuinely don't feel like I'm an arbiter of what's right, because
Yeah.
I speak to an American, they speak it their own way. On Australian, they speak it their own way. And ESL, English as a second language, I think is a language in its own right.
Yeah.
And I think it's very common that people who speak English as a native language are sometimes less able to communicate to people who speak English as a second language than other people who speak English as a second language.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
I
no,
think so.
I mentioned that in the video as well. I think a lot of times
Yeah,
people who are trying to communicate in a language that is a foreign language to both of them, a second language to both of them, like there's a lot more sense of cooperation. There's a lot more sense of understanding and
yes, I've never felt more confident speaking Japanese than to my Korean neighbor when I was staying in dorms for 3 months. When I
yeah.
first started university, they didn't speak a word of English, which obviously means they're stupid. And Bobby just did an eye roll, but you can't see that. But my point is, I never ever felt more relaxed speaking Japanese than to someone who also speaks Japanese as a second language. And so, in Japanese people's defense, there's not much plurality in how Japanese is spoken. Japanese people like to think, oh, he sounds like he's from Osaka. There's Hakata Ben or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Well,
generally, everyone.
I mean, agreed. I agree with that, and I also think there's something to be said for the idea that I mean, we hear a lot of bad takes on Japan from people who don't really speak the language or can't read, and it's like, okay, there should be a limit on how much you should be able to claim to understand the culture if you don't speak the language. If you don't kind of have any access to firsthand info.
Do you really
But
think that though? Because I'm just sorry to interrupt you again, but my goodness, it occurred to me that so many of the journalists for English speaking newspapers that are posted to
yeah,
roles abroad don't speak that language. I'm not going to say who it is, but I have a friend who is a fairly senior journalist in a broadsheet UK paper, and he's just been posted to a country in the Middle East. I don't think he's ever been there, right? And he's going to be like doing frontline reporting, not knowing anything about that country's language, not being able to speak or being able to understand firsthand sources. And
yeah, I think that's a
think
huge handicap.
that, would you accept if a Japanese journalist came to London and was like, I'm going to do my job, but I don't speak, just to let you know, guys, I don't speak any English, right? We wouldn't allow it. We'd go, you're not qualified to do your job.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I was in college and I said I wanted to major in, I wanted to do my specialty in a non-English language literature. The first thing that my advisors told me was like, don't do that unless you speak that language. Like, don't major in French literature and try to pass yourself off as a French literature expert if you can't read it in its original language.
Yeah.
And I do think there is something to be said. Like, you can't really claim understanding unless you can get access to knowledge firsthand. But at the same time, I think this comment was like, this is somebody who clearly has no experience learning a second language. This is somebody who clearly only speaks Japanese and is going in on, why don't you try to fix your pronunciation? Like, it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And like, it's a possible thing to do for an adult language learner who wasn't raised
There'll,
in that language environment.
there'll be listeners that don't know the nature of this comment, but to summarize, this guy commented on one of your videos saying, I'm finding it hard to relate to you because your Japanese accent's not perfect. Why can't foreigners like you put a bit more effort in? Is that a fair summary?
It is. It's also a summary of the summary that I did 3 minutes earlier.
Did you?
Yes. I did it during the time where you were thinking of what you wanted to say and waiting
Yeah.
to jump in and interject it.
So when I listen to a few podcasts, this is the one that I kind of put on in the background. I kind of dip in and out.
To be fair, your summary was a better summary than my summary.
Thank you.
So my response was basically just that, like, I don't care. Like, I get these kind of comments, and I know that my Japanese is not native. I don't expect it to ever be native, and I'm okay with that because my goal is not to be Japanese. My goal is to live and work in Japan and to get along with people who speak Japanese. And I'm doing that just fine. And I think that the fun thing for me this week was that I put up this video where it's like, I don't care. I know it's not native level. I think it's very good. And I want to share this comment with everybody kind of because I want you to understand that you don't have to go for native level ability. And in
Yeah.
Japan, there's this mindset that's like, if you are not perfect in your speech, then you shouldn't try to talk, which that's the reason that you never improve. And so that
Yeah.
was what the video was about. And I posted it and I've got nothing but like a bunch of comments as though I were fishing for reassurances, which is like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Don't pay attention to his comment. You don't have to take it seriously. Your Japanese is great. And I'm like,
That's not the
yeah,
point.
I know. I'm okay. I'm all right.
Although now you know this system works, Bobby. Next time you are feeling low, all you got to
Yeah,
do is post a reaction video to one of your comments. This reminds me of my ex-girlfriend who was Japanese. I presume she still is.
probably.
Uh, she actually might not be. Might be married to a German guy now. She was very very understanding of, despite having herself not lived abroad, very understanding of quite how it can feel to be othered, right? And okay, she was always very understanding. But one kind of linguistic tick that she had was when I would ask her about how to say something in Japanese or the correct phrasing for something, she would say, "Oh, we say this," right?
Yeah.
And in Japanese, "watashi tachi wa," and I said, the reason why I don't like that, right, is not because I disagree that you say that. It's that it creates ownership of the language, right? It's like the Japanese language belongs to a we that I'm not part of, and so I don't think I ever really persuaded her. I don't think I articulated my argument very well. But when you're trying to help someone who's learning your language on how to say a certain thing, the right thing to do is to say, well, they are also legitimate users of the language, right? There's no entry test to use a language, right? It's not the case that.
Hmm.
So maybe my opinion's not strong enough. That's why she never
Hmm.
really got on board. Maybe I didn't articulate it properly. But what I wanted to say was, I don't like you saying we unless you think that me, Ollie, I'm also included in that we. And I know you don't think that. Therefore, that might be divisive language. So on that basis, I never say we. If someone's asking me how do I say this in English, I would say you say, right? Because they also, it's also their language.
That's an interesting point. I never really thought of that, but I will say that if someone were asking me a language question and I would say in English we say, it would not strike me as unnatural. I never read into that element of ownership. But I think if I was asking somebody about Japanese and they said, "Watashi tachi wa ko iimasu" instead of
Yeah.
"Nihongo de wa ko iimasu," it would strike me as a little bit unnatural in the Japanese, not because of an ownership thing, but just because I don't think I've ever heard anybody else say "Watashi tachi wa" as a way to lead into explaining how something is said in Japanese.
Okay. Well, I mean, she definitely said it a number of times, and she's not the only person I've heard it from.
Yeah, yeah, because I think in English we say it's not like a we that's saying, Americans who have ownership of
No,
English.
it's
It's a
inclusive.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a English speakers say. And
Yes.
then I feel like maybe you might have just been a little bit sensitive to the idea of watashi tachi as an identifier of Japanese people excluding other people, which is
Yes,
not
but
necessarily like it's not that it's unfair of you to feel that way on your part because Japan is good at creating those in groups and out groups.
the guy that wrote that comment saying your pronunciation's wrong, is just looking to score points. He is looking to other you and find a way to belittle you. Right? There's no question he doesn't understand you.
Yeah, no, not at all. And there was a real sense that like communication is not a two-way thing. It's like we the foreigners have to adjust perfectly, and if we don't, then it's on us that the communication doesn't go well or that there's some kind of cultural divide.
Yeah. Well, I taught a class for 1 or 2 semesters at Kyushu University on EU law, right? And the class was for Japanese students who were about to go abroad and study in European universities. And one of the points which I like made to my students again and again was I was teaching some of this course in Japanese, right? And my Japanese is not perfect. I'll be the first to say it.
I think I've said it a bunch of times. I think that's
Yeah,
I think I got it out in like the first 3 minutes of the podcast.
that's true. And I said, look, so you guys, you know jack shit about European law, right? So you guys are willing to put in more effort to understand what I'm saying because what I'm saying is of not only of interest, but like you need it to pass the test.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a point that if the person that's speaking says something that's really interesting, you'll be patient. And you know, the platonic ideal of this rule is Stephen Hawking. Should we talk about the news?
Sure.
Bobby, there's a lot going on in this world. What is the most important thing that's happened in the last week in Japan?
I'm gonna go to you for that one because you said you didn't want to talk about coronavirus this week, so you had a different story.
Yes, the story goes as following, and thanks to Michaela for posting this story on her Instagram. East Japan man in serious condition after colleague fires air compressor up his backside. Now I'm interested.
Yeah.
This is from the Mainichi Shimbun, Japan's national daily since 1922.
Mm-hmm.
A company employee of Ibaraki Prefecture, northeast of Tokyo, was arrested under suspicion of causing injury to a colleague by blasting an air compressor into his butt. The suspect, a resident of the prefectural city of Kashima, has admitted to the actions. Brilliant.
Huh.
So the his colleague, who's this 32-year-old guy, got injured. And the article says an industrial use air compressor was pressed against his trousers near his backside, then fired. The man then fell to the floor, and then the guy that fired it called the emergency services.
Huh.
Imagine if he gets taken down for this. The hostility he's going to get in prison, right? All these people that have got it for proper serious crimes, and he has to admit, what are you in for? Air compressor, mate.
Blasted a dude in the butt with an air compressor. So a lot of the way this is written, like I can't really like he doesn't describe the injuries. And I think the first time I read through this article that you sent, it was like so it's an industrial use air compressor. It was pressed to his trousers near his backside. The headline makes it sound like he fired a compressed air into his intestinal tract via the anus. But did he like spray him with it and it knocked him down and he was injured from falling over? Or does he have his intestines in disarray?
I think the Mainichi Shimbun has taken a leaf out of BuzzFeed's book, and I've fallen guilty to their clickbait because the title very clearly says up his backside. I'll repeat, up his backside. But according to the police station, the man fell on the floor after the compressor was pressed against his trousers near his backside. So there is discrepancy.
It says he fell to the floor. So, like, was he knocked down by the blast of air, or was he discombobulated so badly that he collapsed? I really feel like they should have dug a little bit deeper into this. That's a poor choice of words. I really feel like they should have described in more detail. I'll tell you the most hilarious word choice in the entire article for me. Can you guess what it is?
The most hilarious word choice.
It's in the first paragraph.
A company employee in Ibaraki was arrested on suspicion of causing injury to.
There it is. On suspicion. They suspect him. They suspect him of having done it. So I think like he's admitted it. It's acknowledged that he's done it. He's put his coworker in the hospital through air compressor ass related injuries, and they're like, "We suspect." This guy's top-notch detectives. We suspect.
Hey, there's a Japanese version. I wonder if the Japanese headline gets it wrong. Oshiri ni kuki chunyu. So chunyu means injection. So it's the Japanese is vaguer. The reason why this caught my attention was I spent a lot of time in Japanese factories. Every month I would take my cute little tootsie down to Saga and record 4 episodes where I was
Yeah.
taken to different factories and talking about various
Okay.
industrial processes.
Hold on real quick, because the Japanese is actually more specific. It says the English said what? Trousers near the backside?
Yeah.
Near his backside. The the Japanese says in the neighborhood of his anus.
Kormonfkin.
Yes, in the vicinity of his anus.
If anyone is listening to this podcast with the hope of learning Japanese, let's make this be the word Kormonfkin. Repeat after
Komon
me.
hukin. Komon hukin.
Kormonfkin. In the vicinity of my anus.
Yes.
Kormonfkin.
This is nothing to be laughing about, though. I mean, like internal intestine. I mean, you can get serious infections. There was a case a handful of years back. It might have been like forever ago. It's just one of those news articles that gets passed around among new generations of people who like reading about weird Japan stuff. But drunk guy passed out, and his friends pranked him by putting an eel headfirst into his butt, and
oh man.
the eel bit him internally and caused infections because your intestinal tract is a lot of bacteria that's not supposed to get into your bloodstream, and he died.
That's not really a prank, is it?
Nope.
But the reason this got my attention is my experience of going to these factories is the workers in Japan are so, what's the word, infantilized, treated like children.
Infantilized, treated like treated or
And maybe this
presented
is
as children. Yeah.
maybe this is true in factories around the rest of the world, but I can't say I've been to many. But all of like everything is about procedure, and the thing that really astonishes me is uh, that there'll be posters on the wall like encouraging positive, almost childlike behavior, right? Like there'd be a massive poster on the entrance going, "Kyo mo egao de," right? Today, also with a big smile, or
That's not factories, though. That's Japan culture and work culture at large. Like, I mean, you see those
is
in
it?
like, yeah. I mean, you see those in companies and things like that.
And it was
I would agree that I think the maturity level it's for somebody who's like 30 in Japan, especially for men, is more comparable to somebody who's like 19 or 20 in the West.
we might have discussed this on the podcast, but I think you share the theory that Japanese university is basically like American high school, right? And
Yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
high
yeah.
school is basically like uh, American middle school, right? It does seem like there's kind of, I wouldn't say cognitive development, but kind of social development. Things like your first kiss. I guess in Japan it might happen later.
Yeah.
First time you bring your girlfriend or boyfriend back home might be a couple of years later. First time you live away from home, it's very common to live at home while you're at university, even for your first couple of years at a job in Japan. That's less common in America, I guess.
Yeah. We should definitely touch on, because we haven't brought it up yet, the idea that it's actually a Japanese cultural thing for like men to
Yeah,
mess with each other's butts.
correct. I
Yeah.
was waiting for you to bring this up, Bobby. It's a Japanese cultural thing for men to mess with each other's butts.
It is.
I'm glad we said that, but it is. There's a word for it, right? For sticking 2 fingers up someone's buttocks.
So the word that you're thinking of is kancho, and kancho is the word for an enema. It's actually the word for an enema. So like the
Right.
medical procedure, an enema is called a kancho. But among juvenile and like elementary school age, and anybody who's immature, really, especially among boys, it's a very
You're
common
welcome.
thing to clasp your fingers together in this little like both hands making kind of a finger gun kind of pose, and then sneak up behind somebody and jam those 4 fingers in their little configuration into the Komon Hukin, which, if you don't remember, that means that's our word of the day. That means in the neighborhood of the anus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
they're going for penetration.
going for
I
it.
mean, the goal is penetration.
Why do you think men are such trash?
See any of other episodes.
Can we end this episode with some positive news, please, Bobby?
Yeah, let's not just talk about all the butt touching. What's going on?
Positive news is this is the first episode that I've managed to record with both of my own fingers. No, the positive news is right. Well, can I give you some negative news before the positive news?
Yeah.
The negative news, Bobby, is there are racists in this world, right?
People are super racist. There are.
And there are also stupid people. And let me tell you, sometimes some of these stupid people are also racist. And so there's been a downturn in Chinese restaurant utilization. I'm speaking very well today, aren't I? Just like Trump, I've caught myself saying very smart words. And bam, a hack for those who haven't been in Japan very long or are visiting. If you are very hungry and want loads of food at a very cheap price, go to a Chinese restaurant. The portions are always way bigger, right? And it's they use loads of veggies, right? Which I often find, like in a Japanese teishoku, you don't really get many veggies normally, whereas in Chinese restaurants you do. Often they'll give you extra rice if you want it anyway, and the staff are always really nice. I remember in the neighborhood of Hakozaki where I used to live, there were 2 Chinese restaurants where I think for something like 600 yen, you get like a massive, like I'm talking ridiculous, portion of chicken and tofu mixed with a load of greens with fried rice and soup, and then they're throwing like 2 dumplings on the side. Chinese restaurants are brilliant. However, I go back to my original point. Racists exist. And so because of the coronavirus, racists haven't been going to Chinese restaurants. Or stupid people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people who are concerned, because they they associate the virus with Chinese people, and didn't really occur to them that people who are working in Chinese restaurants in Japan are probably residents of Japan and not in China.
Yeah. And so the story is that someone wrote a horrible letter and posted it on the wall of this restaurant, or the door of this restaurant. I don't have the letter in front of me because I'm not a very good podcaster, but it said something like Chinese people are trash.
Huh.
Is that have you seen this?
I think we should call this segment of the podcast "We Only Read the Headline."
No, I read the whole damn thing.
I mean, I saw the headline, and I was like, okay. Oh, bad people. Oh, good people. That was how the arc of the headline went. Oh, okay, bad people. Oh.
I'm showing you on your screen now, Bobby. It's no, I've just that's a picture of my buttocks. Okay, yep. Regret that. It says it says Chugokujin wa gomida, which means Chinese people are trash. Yes. So, Bobby, what are the 2 words that we've learned in this podcast today?
The 2 words?
Well, the 2 phrases we've learned. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
That's all right. This is important.
We've learned Komon Fukin and Chugokujin wa gomida.
For those of you that haven't quite understood what the show is really about, it's our way of teaching the foreign community hate speech.
Yeah, we're always looking to edit out like a good little soundbite that we can use to advertise. I think we should take the 2 seconds where you say Chinese people are trash, and I go, yeah.
This he says a load of other words which are written in kanji, so I regret to say I will not be translating them for you. But he says sayakuda, they're the worst. Then the last sentence is hayaku nihon kara dete ike. Hurry up and fuck off out of Japan. So people were sad when they saw this letter, Bobby. They saw that and they thought, what if I were Chinese? I'd be sad to read that.
Yeah.
And so this neighborhood restaurant has now got queues around the block with people wanting to go and support the restaurant, which I think is a nice thing.
Yeah, I think it was a good human interest story, a little positive news. I looked at it and I said, oh man, if you get hateful comments and then publicize them on the internet, people might show up to support you. And so I started making YouTube videos again.
Thanks for listening to this, episode 25. We've done it, the quarter centenary episode of Japan by River Cruise. We are well into season 2. We know exactly when season 2 is going to end and season 3 is going to begin, but we will not be sharing that information with you. If you would like to get in touch with us, then by all means, do so using japanbyrivercruise.com. I'm going to say that again because you might not have heard me the first time. Japanbyrivercruise.com.
Thank you for listening to our 26th episode. That was our 26th episode.
Oh, no!
We love you. We're a mess, but we love you.